Of the closing doors, please.
Welcome to Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into SST on Apple Podcasts app, Spotify, and on YouTube. Joining me today, as they have so frequently throughout this wonderful NFL season, is Pat Boyle and Cody O'Connor, coming off a week where we combined one game above 500, I believe, or yes, one game above 500 combined this week on the picks. That is correct. Where I went 4-1 and am officially one game over 500 on the season. Now joining us, Pat, 2-3 again this week. Unfortunately, been a little bit of the story for you this football season. But how are you feeling after week 12, heading to week 13 here?
Got to go 20-10 at worst to finish 500 in the regular season. That's my goal. That's my goal at this point. 20-10 the rest of the way. Get to 500, get to the playoffs, and then coast.
So after the 20-10, you decide that's enough. I had enough winning. Now I'm just going to go 500 the rest of the way out.
Oh, no. I mean coast as in not miss a single pick in the playoffs.
Oh, let's go. I love that. Yeah, because it's nice. It's needed. We're combined, all three of us, me, you, and Mark Shenlugan, 19 games under 500 right now. You are 25-35, hence the 20-10 in the remaining part of the season here. And then playoffs can get you over that hump. So excited to see where we're going here. Very exciting slate in week 13 upon us coming up. So very exciting stuff and a lot of stuff to talk about. Also, Cody O'Connor, what's up, my guy? You're not part of the picks, but I feel like you're just along for the ride just as much as we are.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what DraftKings did so well with Ed in that group so that we all get to kind of hold each other accountable. So I can't come on here and say I'm hitting at a 75% clip. You guys know for sure I'm not. But I hope that I can project the confidence that Pat did. 20-10 coast from the rest of the year makes it sound so easy. And I'll be watching closely, listening and hoping that he hits that clip. And I like that you kind of, Pete, don't harp on just you being 500. You're trying to get the guys up over 500. That's a leader if I've ever seen one.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, and I know I'm well aware that my 500 record is very much so built on a house of cards here. I could easily be under 500 next week. It's not like I have a 4-game over 500 record right now. I'm 30-29-1. If it wasn't for a push, I might be 500 on the dot. So I'm not trying to front like I'm some spectacular gambler here this year. I know that if I go 1-4 next week, this ain't good, right? So it's tough. It's been a tough year. I have felt the momentum pick up. I'm going to have some stats prepared for our picks when we do the podcast at the end of the week here about how we've done on teasers versus straight bets, moneyline parlays versus whatever, and just kind of seeing how we've done in the first half of the year versus second. So I'm excited about what's to come in this football season. And I mean, the season is really, really heating up here where division races are still very much alive, which is what we're going to focus on here today. We have the AFC East, AFC North, and the NFC East, NFC South, and NFC West all within a game, or, you know, in the NFC East, it is 2 games right now, but it's pretty close. All those divisions are still up for grabs here. So we're going to discuss all that stuff. We're also going to hit on the Giants and the Jets. But quickly, before we get into the Giants and Jets stuff, I do kind of want to go through some of the gambling stuff here because it is interesting looking back every week and seeing if we could ever kind of learn a thing or two from some of our picks. So here, if you're watching on YouTube, or some of our picks from last week, is there any game that jumps out to any of you two, Cody or Pat? I know, Cody, you and I were talking about a bad beat or before we started recording. So what jumped out to you in week 12 and something that maybe frustrated you a bit?
I didn't have this. Actually, I was on the right side of this because I had the Browns plus 8.5. But that's what jumped out was how the Bucs managed that game down the stretch, up 17-10 for the seemingly whole second half at least. And that 4th and 2 at their 37, they take the delay of game and then punt it into the end zone. So it's a net like 20-yard punt. And it's just when you play scared like that, this is just like in any sports thing. When you play scared not to lose, what happens? Another team, you let them hang around. They come back and beat you, and that's what happened to the Bucs in a spot where the Falcons lose a game. You can gain some traction. You would be on a 3-game winning streak as the Bucs. That's just such a bad loss for them. And now you're asking questions again about that team. I see the red. It's up at the top. That game just sticks out to me with at least your picks. Not I don't know if it's a bad beat or not, but it's just a bad management by the Bucs, and it was frustrating to see, especially as a future on the Bucs guy.
Right. Like that's the question. Is a bad loss for a team that we have higher hopes for, is that equivalent to a bad beat? Or is it a bad bet, which is a term that you kind of brought to my attention before we started recording here. Bad beat versus bad bet. There's a very fine line there where you can feel like you made the right pick. However, it was a loss, or you could just make the wrong pick. Those two things are not the same. Pat, how are you feeling on that front? I mean, Bucks specifically, but just in general on the bad beat versus the bad bet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, or at least I know Mark feels like every bet he loses is a bad beat because he doesn't make losing picks. But not to throw some shade when he's not even on the pod,
It's too
but I
easy.
just
It's low hanging fruit.
it
Like,
is too easy. But no, I mean, I try not to get, you can't get wrapped up in the result. I feel like that's, it's corny, but you gotta get wrapped up in the process. If, for example, if you had Tampa Bay, I mean, they're in the cover for, like Cody said, the entire second half. I mean, all they had to do was not let Jacoby Brissett go, what was it, 85 yards on the final drive, and Joku doesn't make a one-handed catch. That's a 7-point win and a cover. So, I mean, the margin between winning and losing is razor thin. The margin between covering is even thinner. So, I mean, look, I feel fine with that pick. The Bucks -3. I trusted it. I thought Brady coming off of the bye, going up against a Browns team that has been mediocre all year long, had a couple of few bright spots. Picks like that, I'm not going to get beat up over. Picks like I made 2 weeks ago when I had the Vikings +1 against the Cowboys, that's a bad bet. That was just, I was totally on the wrong side of. So that's a difference right there. But then, to give you my thoughts on what I loved seeing in Week 12, Pete and Cody, the ballsy 2-point decisions, the ballsy 2-point conversions to win the games. We saw both of them back-to-back windows. Doug Peterson and the Jags going for the kill against the Ravens, and Brandon Staley, no surprise to anybody, going for 2 in the win against the Cardinals and getting them. It's a kill or be killed league. So I love seeing that. I love that that's how the league has, continued to trend towards the analytics-driven decisions, going for the win, considering you only need 2 yards and the probability of getting it. So I loved seeing things like that. I hope coaches like that continue to be aggressive. I think there's obviously it gets to a point where it's too much, like we saw Staley do last year, going for it on 4th down, no matter where the hell the ball was. But for the most part, I loved seeing the 2-point conversions for the wins in both of those games.
yeah, that is an interesting thing there where it's like, oh, if you don't get the 2-point conversion, it's screw analytics. They're ruining the game. And if you do get the 2-point conversion, it's wow, I love that gutsy call by that coach. Like, what pride and guttural fortitude did that coach have? Like, you can't nitpick. And that's further to the point, Pat, that you just made about not playing the results too hard, right? When you're talking about who's going to win the division or who has the best record, yeah, literally you are playing results. That is exactly what you have to do. But when you're trying to make the right pick from a gambling perspective, or you're trying to decide whether or not you should pay a certain player on your team, you can't just look at results because they're not always accurate. They're not always leading you down the right path. They can easily be misleading. And that happens constantly. And I've been trying to harp on that this year. The team that I want to bet on is almost the team that didn't show up the week before, or the team that I want to bet against is the team that just put out an incredible performance. Like, that's been a lot of the stories of this season so far, and we'll see if that continues. And Cody, funny thing on the DraftKings betting groups, which are fantastic. I do love that. The 3 of us right here, this is like the power group. We must put in a disgusting amount of bets throughout the week. And I know we're all similar where it's like, we'll put in, 5 or 6, like, kind of dumb bets that we know they're probably not going to hit. They're not, going to break our bank or anything like that. But just because we don't see the amounts, you're just seeing me put in 10 bets on Monday night at 8:05. It's like ridiculous, but it's so fun.
All day long, I get notification. It's so funny too. If I get it on my watch, I get to see like your guys' picture show up, and it's right there on my watch. I'm like, oh, Pete Kennedy placed another bet. Sometimes I look, but most of the time they're getting fired off so rapidly. I don't even know what you guys take still.
Yeah, I've actually, and you know what, I've noticed a couple of us have trailed each other a handful of times, and sometimes it's actually worked, which is fun. But also, I did send a screen grab of a little parlay I hit into another group chat with Alec Argento, who's been on the pod a bunch, another friend. And I was like, I wanted to get it on the fun because my friend's still using some other gambling site that he screenshotting into. Whatever. We're not going to talk about it. And he sends in a parlay he hits really big, fantastic. I was like, I want to get in the fun. And I send a little parlay that I hit last night. And Alec responds back because we're in a separate DraftKings group. And he goes, don't act like you didn't put in 13 bets last night. I'm just like, damn. I just got put on blast. I'm like, yo, 5 of them were just first touchdowns for like a couple bucks each, man. Like, don't hate me. But there's all transparency. There's nowhere to hide when we're in the DraftKings groups together. It's good stuff. But all right. Wait, yeah, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say it all depends on what you lose 9 $5 bets, but you win the $50 one. That's all that matters, man. You're taking home money. You're taking home money for the day. And if you lose 9 $5 bets that are all plus 1,000 odds, and you hit one, then you're still taking home money. So don't worry about the haters, man. You keep doing you, Pete. I love seeing your bold first touchdown scorer bets.
Me and Cody are very much eye to eye on that one. On the primetime games. I don't do it on Sunday.
Yeah, no, it's Sunday and Monday night. You and Cody are the first touchdown scorer guys.
Every Thursday, every Sunday night, every Monday night. And if I'm really frisky, maybe a 4 o'clock, but yeah, those are the best times for sure.
Yeah, you're watching one game. You don't have the dulcet tones of Scott Hansen just taking you through a wonderful Sunday afternoon. You need a little extra something to get you going on a Monday where you're watching that first drive. You're kind of finished. You're cleaning a pan. You're kind of peeking the head around the kitchen looking for the TV, and you hear someone's name on there like dropped. It's nothing better. Nothing better. Only thing more exciting is first basket when you're physically at an NBA game. Nothing more exciting. You're in the crowd. Evan Fournier takes the first 3 of the game, and you're like, you and your buddy just start freaking out. You're like, yeah. Everyone's like, what's wrong with you guys? The first play of the game, like, we just won $30. Like, nothing better. But anyways, I digress for now, and we'll move on to talk about the New York Giants and the New York Jets. We will then move on to talk about the tight division races that we still have here in the NFL across both the AFC and the NFC. But how important to talk about the New York Giants and New York Jets right now, because those divisions are still up for grabs, especially the AFC East, which we'll talk to more in depth. But with the Jets specifically, it's been what an interesting year where the defense basically from week 1 has shown up. They have proven that they're a competent unit. Then Zach Wilson was hurt. You get some Flacco time. You get a big comeback against the Browns, and Zach Wilson comes back. He wins some games, whether it was his doing or not, and then he lost some ugly ones, and we know what happened in the post-game press conference. We'll talk about it all. And then riding in on the white horse is Mike White, the savior, the guy who's doing everything to save this team. However, there's question marks about what's next for this Jets team. So, Pat, I want to start with you. What is your general feeling and thought with this Jets team and as far as confidence level? Because I'm hearing Jets fans kind of go a little bit crazy, and maybe they have that right. What do you say about Mike White and the fighting Jets?
I mean, Mike White is a legend. I mean, let's just start there, right? I mean, Mike White threw for more yards at half on Sunday than Zach Wilson had, I think, in all but 2 games this year. If I remember that correctly, Mike White had, 150 yards at the half? And if I remember correctly, and I have the numbers here in front of me to double check, Zach Wilson, in his games this season, threw for more than 200 yards 3 times. And there was 4 times where he threw for under 155. So that was it. Mike White had more yards at the half than Zach Wilson had in all of 4 games this year, 4 separate games. So that just goes to show you, and I think everybody knew that, Jets fans knew that, if this team just had a competent quarterback, then the elite defense that they clearly have, which, I mean, at this point, if you don't see it, I don't know what you're watching, the secondary with Sauce Gardner, the pass rush, which doesn't jump out on paper, but they get to the quarterback, and overall, it's just a solid defense. They're solid in the red zone. They're solid on 3rd down. They get off the field. Now you've got a quarterback that can actually match that defense. You're not leaving him out on the field. And, Jets actually, you had a feeling they were going to be a playoff team, but you could feel it kind of crumble beneath them. Now that feeling is vindicated, it's justified because you actually have a quarterback who you saw last year light it up against the Bengals, and Joe Douglas, the general manager, and Robert Saleh, the head coach, didn't want to Joe Douglas didn't want to look like a fool for getting the number 2 draft pick wrong. So it's like, okay, we have to do everything we can to give Zach Wilson as many opportunities as possible because he's a number 2 pick. It was the wrong decision. It was only a matter of time before they finally had to circle back to this. And here we are. Now they do. And in his first game in the pouring rain, and it's not like he did it against the Bills defense. It's not like he did it against the Titans defense. It's not like he did against the Eagles defense. The Bears, they've lost a lot of players, right, to trades. And they're not that good of a team, but still in the pouring rain in his first start this year, and he lights it up for 300 yards with the skilled players that the Jets have, which are very talented, even with the absence of Breece Hall. Just goes to show you that, okay, yeah, this Jets team now has to be taken seriously with Mike White under center. He is that good. I don't care that he was, undrafted. I don't care that he, has basically not played ever before coming to the Jets. The kid is good. The kid has it. I saw it last year. I was singing his praises all of last season, hoping for him to get a chance, and I thought he should have been the starting quarterback to begin this year rather than the fossil Joe Flacco. So Mike White, I'm one of the biggest fans. I'm one of the biggest fans of Mike White. And, again, you get Elijah Moore into the end zone immediately. You get Garrett Wilson having a gigantic game. And it just goes to show you that this Jets offense can be not as good as the Jets defense, but they could be a playoff caliber offense with the right guy under center. And I think Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, has got to be feeling a lot better about himself too, because I think he was on the hot seat because, who gets scapegoated first, the QB or the OC? A lot of the times it's the offensive coordinator, especially when the quarterback's the number 2 draft pick. But Zach Wilson just totally wrote himself out of that job, acting like an asshole in that press conference the last couple of weeks, throwing guys under the bus, saying that he doesn't need to apologize to the defense. So that was they got a bump from getting a guy under center that actually is a team player, and the play on the field showed immediately. So I think that was I'm not going to blame Jets fans for thinking that they not only have a shot of wrapping up a playoff spot, with a week or two to spare, but that they could get a win in the playoffs. Right now, they would play the Dolphins. I think that game would be a toss-up right now.
Cody, before you jump in, I have to go to the bathroom. I'm going to poop my pants.
I could not have seen that coming next. I thought he had a point to make. He's holding it up. I mean, he could have made up anything too, so he's telling the truth. All right, so we'll just go with this because I'm like not where you are with Mike White, not as far as I think that he's like the savior or anything. He has to show me more games and whatnot. But there's something to be said for a team who makes a change, and you might just have the guys around them who want to play for him. They might want to play with Mike White as opposed to Zach Wilson, who kind of maybe showed us who he is with that press conference. Maybe there's some things behind closed doors that I don't know. Maybe Zach Wilson just doesn't rally the troops. He doesn't do it for him, whatever it is. Mike White had those guys buzzing, albeit against the Bears. He spread the ball. I kept hearing, because I'm watching on Red Zone mostly, Mike White's gotten the ball to 10 different receivers. It was like the second quarter. He had already spread the ball to pretty much the full team. And you could see the love for him afterwards. And I just think there's something about a guy like that who might uplift the rest of the team. I think that's where it is more than I think Mike White might be the next, big thing. He might not be the most skilled. He's undrafted, whatever. If you've got a team with a defense like that and the skill position players they have, the Jets have done a hell of a job drafting this team and flipping the script from what they were the past couple of years to now. I don't know that I don't think that it's a toss of Miami, because I think Miami is legit just scary. 30-plus a game hanging on your head. I don't see how nobody's been stopping them, but it's a conversation for a different day. If you're a Jets fan, you have to be excited for no reason other than when's the last time you were in this position? When's the last time you could say that at this point in the season you're playing meaningful football with a outside chance at the division, but a real chance at the playoffs with a defense that's going to show up, like you said? I mean, they know who they are. And Mike White doesn't have to light it up every week. He just has to manage games and keep them in it and give the defense a chance to shine. I think he can do that. So they're very much a legit chance at the playoffs. And that's why you got to be excited. Like I said, as a Jets fan, sorry, I just watched Steph Curry hit a bet for me. So let's go. But yeah, I mean, as a Jets fan, you got to be excited. The same reason I've been excited as a Giants fan. It's just been a while. Excitement, enjoy the ride. You don't know when you're going to get to see it again. We'll see what happens with Zach Wilson afterwards. I think that's a massive question mark. But they have enough around to think this team has a chance to secure that playoff spot. And then it would, I think, it'd be very much matchup dependent. And I'm sure there'd be a dog in any playoff game. But be excited, Jets fans. You should be.
Yeah, and I actually read the numbers wrong, Cody. He had 235 yards at the half. I don't mean to be selling my guy Mike White short here. 235 yards at the half on 16 of 20 passing. Zach Wilson only had more than 235 yards in 2 of his 7 starts this year. So, and the fact that they had their first opening possession touchdown drive of the season immediately when Mike White steps into the offense lets you know how hamstrung this team was with Zach Wilson under center. He's just, at this point of his career, I don't want to call his career over. I don't want to call him a bust. It's looking like that. But at this point in his career, he was just a terrible, mediocre, good-for-nothing quarterback. And the opposite of good for nothing, good for creating controversy within your locker room and really resenting making your receivers resent him. So it was clearly day and night. And, again, if Mike White is under center for the last couple of games against New England, the Jets absolutely win at least one of them, if not both. They could be looking 8-3. I mean, you can't cry over spilt milk at this point. But I mean, if this is the kind of quarterback play that they're going to get the rest of the season, holy shit, I can't believe I'm saying this. There's no reason that the Jets can't be a dark horse to win the AFC, man. Get to the AFC championship game.
That's where I temper my expectations because it's a Bears defense that's been getting lit up. Because, like you said, they lost players. It's not the same defense it was even early on in the year. But, like, where does Zach Wilson get off saying that to the media? Like, he made it such a no-brainer because I think his job was already being called for. But what have you accomplished, Zach Wilson? You just said it. He's thrown for 250 yards, like, twice or whatever the numbers are. It doesn't matter. You could see it. The eye test tells you. Yeah, like, he throws a good ball. He's probably got something there. But the arrogance to think that you can come out and say, no, I don't owe my defense an apology. Sometimes, like, in the media, like, they ask questions where you're like, yeah, no shit. Like, you have to say that. He got asked a question that was as simple of a layup question as there could have been, dude. You sucked in that game. You scored 3 points. You didn't give your offense any chance. Your defense played their asses off. And because of that, you lost the game. And you come out with a response like that in New York? Zach Wilson, dude, who's his PR people? Who is around him? How does he say something like that? Like, how does that happen?
I don't know. I mean, his dad texted him when they were, after that press conference, and he was like, dude, bro, what are you doing? Because, I mean, at that point, I get there's being immature, there's being a 23-year-old quarterback, but then there's also just like, how have you even made it this far in your life? Like, how have you made it 2 seasons in the NFL without people wanting to kick your ass? Because talk about being tone deaf and just taking zero accountability. When you're deep, like it's clear as day to anybody that even tunes in for a single minute of Jets football at all this season that he was the problem and that the defense was clearly far and away the only thing keeping this team together. So, look, Jets fans have all the reason in the world now to be excited again and be boisterous and think that this team could make the AFC Championship game. I think that's the ceiling with Mike White under center. We'll see if they can get there. I mean, they're 1 or 2 more injuries away from, really kind of falling off the tracks. I mean, I'm stunned they're still here at this point after losing Breece Hall, after losing AVT, after losing Becton early in the season. They really can't afford any injuries to that defense because it's the best thing they still have going for them. But again, and I know it was the Bears defense, Mike White and this offense now are pulling their weight here.
Yeah, and that's what they have to do. Like, that's the thing about the NFL too, which is so awesome. You can convince yourself because it's winning 1, 2 games that you're in the AFC Championship, you can convince yourself of that as a fan. And that's what you should do. That's literally what it is to be a fan. Maybe it's irrational, maybe it's not. But you should convince yourself of that, as our guy Pete, hopefully doing all right, comes back and joins us. Yeah, all right, buddy?
Did you guys keep it going the whole time?
The whole time.
I didn't break script once.
I think I got to keep it in now.
Well, you see what you like.
Something else came out, but I'll keep that in.
There you go.
Hey,
well done. Well, we've gotten all our Jets takes off. So, Pete, I would say the floor is officially yours.
Holy hell. I'm not okay.
Okay, not to be okay.
I was thinking about how long it's going to take me to edit that later. It probably wouldn't take that long. It would just take long to export or whatever. Who cares? Now I feel like I have to leave it in because of how you guys just carried on without me. The Jets, to get my shit together here for a second. I don't know what you guys said, so I'm just going to go rogue here. I'm nervous that Mike White is going to come down to earth here. And I don't know if you guys touched on this at all here. I know what Pat said because I heard that part. And I understand how much better Jets fans feel right now and how much better they should feel right now. And I'm not saying he's going to now all of a sudden be terrible. He's going to be a disaster. I don't think that's the case, but it's important to manage your expectations here. If you're a Jets fan, your defense is very good. We know this. Your offense has some talent. We got to see it this past week with Mike White. However, if Mike White was this guy all along, and we saw glimpses of it last year, why did it take so long? And why did he get no chances in those first couple weeks when Joe Flacco was getting run out every week? So I'm not ready to come here and say, oh, the Jets are set. They're going to make a run. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to beat all the teams they're supposed to beat. Because all we saw him beat was the Chicago Bears without Justin Fields, a defense that's abysmal. I need to see a lot more. Now, the Vikings, who they're playing here, are not some sort of world beater defense where they're going to absolutely put the clamps on you and make you feel a lot of pressure. They're not that team, but they're much better than the Bears. And then moving forward, you know, the Jets do have some difficult games coming up. It's not like they're going to walk through and win a bunch of games moving forward. They have the Bills coming up again. They do have the Jaguars, Seahawks, and Dolphins in the latter portion of the year. Yeah, they have the Lions stuck in there, whose defense is bad too. But to sit here and say Mike White is now the answer and he's your franchise quarterback and he's the savior and he's the dude, I want to be like Mike, like all that stuff to me is way too aggressive. And it's not reasonable to put that expectation on this team, because if they were this team, if they are that good, they would have figured out more things quicker, right? It would have come together sooner. So now all of a sudden LaFleur is a good play caller. Now all of a sudden this offense is going to put up 24 points plus every single week. I'm not convinced, and I don't think this is going to be a cakewalk. I don't think we're going to leave this season and say, yes, Mike White is the quarterback of the Jets moving forward. So that's kind of my stance here. I don't know what you said, Cody. Did you agree or disagree to that?
I was a little more on your side because Pat seems to be like a super fan over there of Mike White.
I am. I'm Mike White for MVP.
Yeah. So put it in. I'm sure you'll get good odds. Code TBPN. Look at me.
Hey.
No, I think that it's, first of all, like it's kind of like hats off to the Jets for making this move, because you had to bench Zach Wilson. And like, I don't know that the Jets always do that in the past, make the right, logical, good move, like a good organization would do. But I was saying more that Mike White might be a guy who his guys rally around and maybe want to play for a little bit more than they did Zach Wilson, who, when we see that in the press conference, maybe that's the guy he's been around the locker room. Maybe these guys are sick of that. And that, I think that stuff matters, man. I think all, like Pat said before, it's such razor thin margins, winning and losing. So if you've got just that little extra pep in your step, that might be enough. I don't think, like you, I don't think that Mike White is the savior or anything, but maybe he's a little bit of a step up. But I was with you too. Like, Bears defense, got to see more. Haven't seen all that. Jets know who they are. That's, you know, people can listen if you keep it in. That's pretty much where I was at.
Yeah. And I don't want to completely just pour cold water all over it. Like, he deserves credit. And that attitude he has is way better than anything they had before. And it's way better than Flacco. It's way better than Zach Wilson. So I'm pro the move. I'm pro what the Jets are doing. I actually think that the Jets are now more aligned with my preseason take that now than they were a few weeks ago, even when they were winning some games that they maybe weren't supposed to win. And now the Giants are getting more aligned to my preseason take, where their flaws and their injuries are catching up to them. But with the Jets, I don't think they're going to now win the next 6 games. I don't think they're going to lose the next 6 games. I just want to say this is going to still be bumpy. This is still not going to be easy. They're not going to now be favorites against the Vikings. They're not. They're 3-point dogs, which is actually a spread that is very reasonable, if not probably smaller than what we would have expected, if we guessed the line on Sunday morning before the games last week. And same thing for the Bills. Maybe it's going to be a 4.5, whereas with Zach Wilson, it would have been a 7.5. Like, maybe Mike White is that big of a difference compared to Zach Wilson. However, don't now say, oh, Jets fans saying, oh, we're a lock for the playoffs. That's not the case. That is definitely not the case.
I disagree. I think they are. I think the Jets are absolutely a lock for the playoffs. I think, Pete, to answer your one of the first things you said, I wholeheartedly believe the fact that it was Joe Flacco over Mike White at the beginning of the season, and that they never really gave him a chance, is that Joe Douglas didn't want to die, but wanted to stay on top of that hill of Zach Wilson is the number 2 draft pick. That is usually what a general manager keeps or loses their job for, is the quarterback, when you draft a quarterback in the top 3. And he wanted to stay on top of that hill as long as he could. I think he understood the pressure that Zach would have felt if they gave Mike White the reps in the first couple of weeks, and he lit it up. And then it was like, okay, wow, now we actually have a quarterback controversy. I think he wanted to eliminate that at all costs and give Zach the best opportunity, even though he knew that the writing was on the wall. Last year, Zach wasn't that good. He had some moments, but you saw the true side of Zach Wilson more and more as the year went on. And I think the fact that, you said, yeah, all the points you made about the Bears defense being terrible is true, but also this was the first week that Mike White was getting any actual reps in practice with these receivers. The first game, obviously, that he got any reps with these receivers, and it was instant. It was instant. The chemistry, the touch passes. It looks like he's been under, running that offense for the entire season. So I think there's a lot to be said about how much he can improve and how much this offense can get even better, even though the defenses that they're going to play for the most part will be better than the Bears. But I said I would count one of the Jets as the dark horses to win the AFC right now.
Oh my goodness! Is the defense,
Pete? Is the defense not there?
The defense is there. The
defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense right now. I will put that argument up against anybody.
Maybe if the run game was still with Breece Hall, and then you go defense and run game travels in the playoffs, I maybe could see it a little more.
Well,
to say that they're in the class of the Chiefs and Dolphins right now is really difficult. And even though the Bills have fluttered a little bit lately, and the Bills, right? Like, I don't think they're in that class. Can you argue they're in the same class as the Ravens? Yes. Can you argue they're in the same class as the Bengals? Yes, you can argue that. But I still think it's a tough argument personally. But you're right that competence right away means something. However, we've seen it before with backup quarterbacks who come in and you kind of simplify the game plan, and you just need a guy to make the right decisions and not lose the game for you. And then after a couple weeks and more film out on what they're going to do with Mike White makes it a little more difficult, right? Like, I'm not going to compare Mike White to Cooper Rush, but when Cooper Rush first came in for the Cowboys, they had an elite defense. But then after a couple weeks, you started seeing the ceiling on a Cooper Rush-led team. Again, I'm not comparing Mike White to Cooper Rush per se, but I'm comparing backup to backup. I need to see what happens after defenses can prepare for Mike White, can see what he likes to do, can see his tendencies. The quick decisions are impressive. Getting his guys who are super talented. I thought the Jets had talent on the skill position level all year long, and they just weren't using it. That's all really great. That's all positive. But I'm not ready to go as far as you, Pat. But I think that's a fair thing to say.
All I'm saying is this. First start last year, he throws for 405 yards against the defense that ends up going to the Super Bowl. First start this year, in the pouring rain, he throws for 315 yards and basically has an immaculate quarterback rating. So I think the ceiling for Mike White is extremely, extremely high. I am a super fan, but I'm a super fan because my eyes have seen the truth. Mike White is the truth, and I think the Jets. There is a landscape where the Jets are playing in the AFC Championship game this year.
Wow.
I told Cody a couple of minutes ago they can't afford really any more injuries to this team because the foundation was starting to crack underneath them. But with the team they got right now, the roster they have, it was night and day. Mike White steps in, and in week 12, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Jets get their first opening possession touchdown drive. It's not a coincidence how much better this offense is with him under center.
Yeah, it felt really good. It felt really good for the Jets and Jets fans for sure. He also did have a 4 interception game later down the road last year as well, Pat.
That is true. That was against the Bills.
I'm just saying. So
a team who they'd probably have to beat in the playoffs. He's like, but again, that was the Bills. It's way different.
But it's not the same Bills defense because of all their injuries as well, which helps their case wholeheartedly for sure. So I guess we'll see, right? Because with this AFC East, and we'll talk more about the AFC East in general, but the Pats are still lingering right near the Jets. They have 2 games against the Bills coming up. The Dolphins are obviously leading the way right now with the tiebreak on the Bills. They have to play each other one more time as well. So we'll keep an eye on. We'll talk about the AFC East in a few moments. But let's talk about the Giants quickly here before we go into the division talk and discuss, I guess, what's next for this Giants team. Daniel Jones still being a big talking point for the Giants. Obviously, there's all these caveats that deservedly so exist with the injuries that this team's dealing with the lack of weapons that this team has on the offensive side, the defensive injuries that they're dealing with. McKinney now it says he's going to come back this season, but when? So their season, where it looked like just a week or so ago, they were a shoo-in for a playoff berth. Now they've lost twice in a row. They play the Commanders, who are playing really good football. They got to go Commanders, Eagles, Commanders, Vikings, Colts, Eagles. Now, their saving grace may be the Eagles already locked in the 1 seed in week 18, and that's more of a gimme than it looks like right now. But this path for the Giants to make the playoffs is a lot more difficult here. They're currently sitting at 6th, but just a half game above the Commanders, who, again, they play twice. So, Cody, I'll go to you first on this one. Being the Giants fan in this group here, where's your head at with this team, with Daniel Jones, with the offense, and all the injuries right now?
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, they were a less than talented team to begin the year, who I think what the excitement was with that. They were so well coached. They were well disciplined. They weren't beating themselves. Like, that's what everything about the Giants was leading you to excitement. You have those injuries happen, and this team that, again, already wasn't that talented to begin with, loses these key guys, pretty much every wide receiver. They lose their tight end Bellinger. They lose McKinney. It's just too much for a team like this to overcome. But because they were able to get to a 7-2 mark, they're still in it. Like, I don't want to sit here and act like their playoff hopes are dead. They win 3 games. They're pretty much a shoo-in for that playoff. Can they take it to the Commanders, who they've had really good success in the past? Can they not beat themselves? Maybe the Commanders are playing a little above their heads right now. So it's tough to get wins. Like, you see it against Dallas, where Dak throws a couple picks, and like, they're a team in Dallas who can make those mistakes and come back from them. The Giants have to play a near perfect game in order to compete, and that's what's so tough. They can't afford to make those mental mistakes. They can't afford Daniel Jones to miss a throw to Saquon on a 4th and 1. Saquon maybe could have caught it. It could have been a better ball too. They just can't have those things happen. They're not good enough to overcome those mistakes. So that's their outlook. If they can play a couple near perfect games, they can sneak their way in. That's what their ceiling is, especially with all the injuries.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at we're talking about playoffs. If the Giants are going to be able to kind of gut it out here the final couple of weeks of this season, it's going to come down to them, Washington and Seattle, for that last spot. You would have so for two of the final spots. I don't think Atlanta or Detroit has any real shot of making the playoffs. I mean, they basically would have to win out. So you got The Giants at 6, at 7-4, Washington at 7-5, Seattle at 6-5, 6, 7, and 8, and 7 teams get in. So, I mean, they just can't be the odd men out. You've got to split with Washington. If they get swept by the Commanders, you can basically consider the season done. But then the other game on that schedule, the one soft spot is the Colts. They have to win that game, and there's 2. Then okay, where do you get the last one? It's going to either have to come again one of the times against the Eagles. I think at that point the Giants are hoping the Eagles lock up the number 1 seed, and they've got nothing to play for in the final week. Or can they upset the Minnesota Vikings on the road? Doable, but I think there's it seems like the world is ending because the Giants have lost 3 out of their last 4. Injuries continue to pile up. Things are going to turn around. They're not going to be as good as they were the first 7 weeks. They're not going to be as bad as they've been the last couple of weeks here. So things will even out. And I think that they've got a long rest here between Thanksgiving when they lost to the Cowboys, which, again, that should have been a blowout. And, yes, they got the backdoor cover. It doesn't really change how you feel about the game, but they still only end up losing by 1 score. And, Daniel Bellinger up in the air right now to come back for Sunday. If they can get him back, that's a huge element in the passing game because Lawrence Cager, he had 1 touchdown. But, he's not the same run blocker as Bellinger. He's not the same pass catcher, not even close. And then, you look at the defense, having Adoree Jackson out because of that decision to have him return punts, which was stupid. One of the only stupid things that Daboll has done this year, that's going to hurt. But, other than that, this makeshift offensive line continues to, get the job done as best as they can. And Evan Neal, he's also looking like he's going to play on Sunday. So you get a couple of key guys coming back here this Sunday for the Giants. You're going to get a scrappy game with Heineke and the Commanders no matter what. You win this game on Sunday, and then you can really start thinking about the playoffs once again. When you look at how this season's kind of feel like it's been split in 2 halves now. Unbelievable carpet ride for the first 7 weeks, and now it feels like they can't beat anybody outside of the Houston Texans here the last month. This Giants team is somewhere in the middle. They're obviously not as good as the 6-1 start. They're not as bad as the last couple of weeks here. So I'm excited to see how this team does on Sunday because it's going to feel like the pressure's, really, really back on them after it felt like they kind of, got themselves a cushion after the 6-1 start.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that any negativity that comes from me is caveated with these 2 teams, the Jets and the Giants, both being set up to be successful moving forward. Like, this was truly the building block season that you would have hoped for both teams. They both played above expectation for a while here. Now maybe the Jets are getting a little stronger. The Giants are getting a little weaker. You can argue either way, but the building blocks are there where you can now see a route for both of these teams to get truly better in the offseason with the Giants salary cap and books just getting way cleaner after this season ends, where they can do some things. And it's important to note, in Daniel Jones's first season where he came in for Eli and had 24 touchdowns, which has been a mark he hasn't been able to catch up to. They averaged 21 points a game, but they were pretty bad, right? They were bad on defense. They scored a little more on offense, but whatever. I'm not putting much stock into it. Then Daniel Jones' first season as a full-time starter, 17 points a game. His second season as a full-time starter, his third year overall, 15 points per game. This year, they're at 20.5 points per game. And that means something, right? Like, even with the lack of talent that this team has, Daniel Jones and this offense with Daboll and whatever you want to add to it, they are way more effective today than they were a year ago and beyond, right? So there's a lot of positives to draw from. But if we're talking about just this season, there's a reason that there's fans like myself who have been kind of skeptics throughout this season, because it kind of felt like Cody said before, they were playing perfect games to win every single week, right? Like, they were playing these moments and they were hitting every single key moment of the game in stride, right? Like, you can't count on that. And that's the difference where we were talking about way earlier of playing the results versus playing the process. The process is strong here for the Giants. However, the talent doesn't coincide with it. So those results are all great. However, it doesn't predict what's going to happen for them for the rest of this season. So I really need to see if this offense can keep taping it together and putting over 20 points on the board. Because now in the last 4 weeks, like you mentioned, Pat, where it's been a struggle, 13 points against Seattle, 24 against a Texans team that people just blink and put up 30 against, and then 18 against the Lions and 20 on the back door against the Cowboys. So can this team, with the injuries they're dealing with, get to 21 points a game? That's been the big mark for them there for Daniel Jones' entire tenure. They can't average between 14 and 17 points a game. It's not going to get it done. We're seeing it in Denver too. That defense has been really freaking good all year. Their offense is so abysmal that at one point, if they scored 18 points per game, they would have been like 8-1 or something like that, right? Like that's how good their defense was. The Giants don't have that defense. They don't have an elite unit at all. Maybe if you want to count Saquon as a running back unit by himself, they are elite there, and that's it, right? So that's why my hopes are not high for the Giants. My hopes are actually higher for the Jets for this season, but it cannot be lost that both of these teams, the Jets and Giants, have true building blocks to find success consistently moving into next year. And whatever happens this year is basically icing on the cake.
Yeah, I mean, I went into this year thinking they might not win 4 games. So yeah, I kind of have to remember that. And Pat, you brought up a good point that they're going to have a lot of time in between. I think that's going to be huge for Saquon, who really hasn't looked like that explosive Saquon the last 2 weeks. I don't know if it's because the weeks prior he's getting 35 runs a game. That's probably a good indicator. 10 days off might do a lot for him, get him back healthy, and hopefully make the Giants, that offense look a little bit more like it had those first 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, and hopefully Daniel Jones' success against the Commanders continues, because then they win those two. Like, here we are.
Yeah, and the one thing that no matter what, with all the injuries, no matter what, that they've been able to keep themselves in games is because they don't turn the ball over. They've got the 6th best turnover differential in the NFL. Daniel Jones, there's only like 4 starting quarterbacks that have thrown less interceptions in the NFL than Daniel Jones this year. Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts, Jimmy Garoppolo, who has played 10 out of 11 games, Ryan Tannehill, who has played 9 out of 11 games, and Tua, who has played 9 out of 11 games. So Daniel Jones, this has been his best season by far. He has shown to everybody, all the critics, all the doubters, all the haters, that he doesn't have to throw for 300 yards a game. They finally found an offense that works. They're coaching to his strengths, running the football, getting him outside of the pocket, using his legs. And if there's nobody open, throw the ball away or tuck it and see if you can get even 3 or 4 yards and learn how to slide. He still needs to learn how to slide, but in terms of decision making, he has been, incredible this year with making the right decisions in terms of, limiting the turnovers. So if they do that, they continue to have a positive turnover differential. They're going to stay in basically every single game they're in that they play. So that's been the one thing that has been a constant, and it's been a reason why I think they can still be successful, even, as this team is fighting injuries just as much as the other team every Sunday.
Yeah, so like I said before, Commanders twice, Eagles twice, Vikings and Colts. If they win 2, that might be enough. It looks like it would be enough. They would have to deal with what the Commanders do elsewhere, what the Seahawks do elsewhere, but that's pretty much it, right? So there's a really good chance for them to get in with just 2 wins, and I think they can make that happen, and a playoff game for the Giants would be a huge win. Same thing for the Jets. So exciting times, even though there's some reason to just have some sort of caution with both of our New York football teams. But all right, let's talk about some of our division races. Pete Kennedy, Cody O'Connor, Pat Boyle, Subway Sports Talk. Now there's all these divisions that are still very much up for grabs in the NFL. And I say just because we already talked about the AFC East a little bit, let's just start there so we can knock that one out of the park. I'm surprised a little bit here. I'm surprised because if you look at the odds in the AFC East about who's going to win that division, I'm surprised. Right now, the Buffalo Bills are not just favored, but they're minus 225 to win the division, while the Dolphins, who are currently the leader in the division with a tiebreak so far over the Bills, are plus 275. So, Pat, is that reasonable odds right there? Is it reasonable to still look at the Bills as the big bad of the AFC East, the minus 225 favorite, with the Dolphins still kind of a half a long shot at least to win the division, obviously with the Jets at plus 1,000 and Patriots at plus 2,500?
I think it's reasonable because I'll tell you what, Pete. I'm sure there's probably a decent amount of people that think that the Dolphins can beat the Bills and sweep the season series. I'm not one of those people, especially not when it's going to be in Buffalo in a week before Christmas. It's going to be freezing cold. Hell, it might even be snowing. Not 6 feet, but there's going to be a chance of some precipitation. And you get the Bills playing in their own element in their own backyard. I'm going to say that the Bills win that game 8 times out of 10 at home. So I'm going to go ahead for the sake of the argument saying that they beat Miami and there's no longer that tiebreaker. And then you look at the rest of the schedule. Dolphins have to play at San Francisco on Sunday, at the Chargers the week after that on Sunday night. The Bills, they play the Packers, which now looks like one of the easiest matchups every single week, at the Patriots versus the Jets. And you look at the Bills' schedule, they play at New England in tomorrow. As this is posted on Wednesday, they're playing the Patriots tomorrow night. Then the Jets, there's the rematch with the Dolphins, at the Bears, at the Bengals versus the Patriots. I think it's a very slightly softer schedule for the Bills, considering they get to play the Bears. The soft one for the Dolphins is the Packers. But, again, for me, it's primarily because I think the Bills beat the Finns when they square off again in Week 15. And I just still think that the Bills are the second best team in the AFC right now. And once we get to January, I like their chances to go up against the Chiefs and anybody else and get to the Super Bowl. They were my preseason pick. I'm still sticking with it. I know Josh Allen has to clean up the red zone turnovers for sure. He has thrown 11 interceptions this year. This team is still as talented as any other team in the league. They've had limited injuries this year, outside of Micah Hyde. And now Von Miller, who's out, not sure how long he's going to be out. They said could be a couple weeks, could be the entire season. Either way, that's really the only injuries they've been dealt this season, at least looking forward. So I think this team still stacks up with anybody else, and I would still take the Bills to win the division.
Yeah, I might take – I still like the Bills to win the division, but I think that's mispriced because I took one of my bigger bets going into the year, Bucs and Bills to win their division. The Bills are minus 230 preseason. They're minus 225 as they go into Week 13 with the same record as Miami now and having lost the tiebreak. So to me, that's a little bit too high. I think there's some value on Miami. I hope you're right, Pat, for the sake of my bet. And for the Bills, I think there's two sides of the coin to look at. One, they haven't been playing their best football. They really don't look really all that great, like the world beater, top of the class of the AFC Bills. But they've been able to scratch out wins in games. It's the other side where they haven't looked their best. They get those wins. Maybe they're getting healthier, especially Josh Allen's arm, which I think is what is going to propel them to either the Super Bowl or keep them from making it. It's going to be on his arm. Can he limit those turnovers, especially in the red zone? That, to me, is where they're at. And if you're Vegas, I just don't see how at this point in the season – a tie at the top of the division keeps them at just about the same odds as they were preseason, where I think preseason, at least that's how I felt, so I put my money on them. They felt like there's no way anyone in that AFC East could have a chance at sniffing the Bills. And now here we are, and they're the same price. That's a little fishy to me. I think there's good value on Miami.
I agree with you, Cody. I think the value is what throws me off, right? But then that makes me question, right? Like, are we putting too much stock into the Dolphins because Vegas is telling us kind of what they think? Excuse me, as I just sneezed there. But Vegas is almost telling us what they think, right? And I think Pat's point to the Dolphins playing the Niners and the Chargers back-to-back being very difficult, I think that the Dolphins could beat the Niners. I think the Niners are Vegas's darling. Every single week they're seemingly big-time favorites. They're still favorites to win their division by a long shot. They're minus 650 down there in the NFC West. Even when the Seahawks were clear leaders, not even just tied leaders for the division, the Niners were still the Vegas favorite to win that division. So maybe they're telling us something that we don't want to admit because we've seen the output from the Dolphins offense. But right now it's hard to imagine the Dolphins offense not going out every week and putting up points. They've done it every single week that Tua Tagovailoa has played. Every time he started and finished the game, they're very good. They're not just like getting lucky. They're not just winning these games where the defense is creating turnovers like they were last year with Tua, they're winning with offense. They're winning with explosiveness, and that's something that's kind of hard to um, to not put stock into. But who knows? As you get later in the season and defenses tighten up, maybe that means they're going to slow down a bit, right? Some of these offenses that are absolutely unstoppable throughout the season usually end up slowing down at some point. And if you're lucky, you're like the Bengals, where it's the opposite, where you start going off in the second half of the season and you take that right to the Super Bowl. Who knows if that's what the Dolphins are going to be this year? But I totally agree with you, Cody. I think the odds make you say, hey, it's worth throwing $20 on the Dolphins plus 275, because you're not going to throw $20 on the Bills minus 225. So what's the point, right? So the odds tell me to take a long shot on the Dolphins here, but maybe Vegas is telling me that the hopefulness for the Dolphins fans to win that division are not exactly accurate. So yeah, so I guess
I
we'll
hope
see.
so.
Right. Yeah. I guess so. It's one of those things, right? Like, do you trust what Vegas is telling you with the odds, or do you trust kind of what we've watched every Sunday? And then again, come back to that idea of playing the results versus playing the process. So moving on.
Or the Jets beat both of them and the Jets win the division with MVP Mike White.
It's true. Dude, they're only one game back, right? It's not
They have the
impossible.
tiebreaker over the Bills too right now.
They do. It's not impossible. And in a way, they control their destiny to some degree, right? Like if they beat the Bills and the Dolphins flutter a little bit, maybe the Bills beat the Dolphins and the Jets take care of business. It's not impossible. And right now, the entire AFC East, at least 26 point plus on their point differential this year, the Bills being plus 110, obviously with a couple big blowouts in there as well. So Jets and
Pete, what are the Jets on that? What are the Jets odds to win the AFC East?
I'm gonna guess plus 650.
Oh,
That's a good guess.
If you were listening before, I actually said it. They're plus 1,000. Plus 1,000.
Hold on,
so
myself.
Pat just got a little excited there. I mean,
the wheels turning in Cody's head.
No, in my head I go, oh shit, Pete just called me out. I'm not listening to the podcast that I'm on right now.
No, it's all good. I said it pretty quick. So yeah, Jets are plus 1,000. So I guess big time long shot there. So maybe Vegas is saying, pump the brakes on the Jets running the table. However, their playoff odds are still very strong, as the playoff odds for the Jets are even minus 115 to make the playoffs, which might be a solid bet. And Pat, if you're confident in the Jets, you can go ahead and bet them week to week, but you don't know what the spreads are going to be precisely. You can just take them to make the playoffs at minus 115. And there you go. You might turn a little profit on that and then bet them week to week on top of it. So Jets fans, not crazy. Not crazy. Let's talk about the AFC North, though. AFC North is another division that has similar odds situation here. So right now, the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals are tied 7-4, but the Ravens beat the Bengals already this year, currently at minus 280 to win the division. Bengals in second at plus 225 to win the division. However, the Lamar Jackson-led offense for this Baltimore Ravens definitely not looking incredibly sharp as of late, and their injuries and lack of talent are catching up to them. So that's been a struggle. Even in some of their wins, it's been a little bit ugly, right? They only won 13-3 against the Panthers. They lost 28-27 against the Jaguars. As we know, we talked about earlier with the 2-point conversion. So Ravens, Bengals, what is the rub here, Pat? And do those odds make sense to you with the Ravens being minus 280 to win that AFC North?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the one where I would say if I'm going to bet value, I'm going to bet the Bengals. But just really quickly, how crazy is it that the Ravens, really should be 11-0, because the 4 losses they've had, they were all like pretty massive, if not like very late leads that they just totally choked and gagged and threw up on themselves and blew. It's absurd. I know Cody sent a picture in our group chat. I think it was literally just yesterday.
I'm looking right now.
Yeah, of when they had their biggest leads in those games against the Bills, against the Dolphins, against the Giants and the Jags, and then obviously, they turned out to be all very slim, narrow losses in the final seconds. So it feels like the Ravens are still such a great team, and they are, but man, I said it yesterday to you guys, it feels like John Harbaugh is doing everything he can to make us believe he's a terrible head coach now, because how can you lose 4 games like that in the span of a year, let alone in the span of 12 weeks. But, then again, you said they've got the tiebreak over Cincinnati. And again, I'm going to go back to the schedule. They play Russell Wilson and the pathetic Broncos this weekend. They get to play Pittsburgh twice. They get to play the Browns and the Falcons before they finish the year with that matchup against the Bengals again. Whereas Cincinnati has to play the Chiefs. They've got to go on the road and play Brady and the Bucs. They've got to play New England on the road, and they've got to play the Bills. So, the schedule obviously heavily lines up for the Ravens. That being said, if they can blow leads to the Jacksonville Jaguars, then they could lose to anybody on any given week. And I've said it this year, Pete, I kind of got off the Ravens train that you were very so heavily on before the season. You still should be on it, and you still should be feeling great about it again, because this team in theory could be 11-0. But I think this offense is solely predicated upon Lamar Jackson. I'm a fantasy owner of Mark Andrews. I have grown very angry at him and this offense over the last couple of weeks, because it just feels like they leave a lot of juice, on the towel every single week on what they do offensively. And their secondary absolutely cannot be trusted on any given drive, any given week. So I still think there is a ton of faults to be had in this team. And I don't know, maybe I'm being prisoner of those 4 blown losses, those 4 blown leads. But I do think, again, if you're going to bet value, it would be the Bengals, although I don't see how the Ravens lose this division.
I feel like those odds are strictly schedule going forward line, because the Bengals seem to be trending up while the Ravens, albeit they lost one, that game against the Panthers felt like a loss just by watching it. 13-3, they couldn't get anything going offensively. And I do have the graphic up here. So they're up. There are 4 losses this year, all 4. 35-14 against Miami, 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They lose that game. 20-3, they're up at half, granted, against Buffalo. But if I'm not mistaken, they lost that in the last minutes as well. They lost that one. 20-10, 6 minutes left against our beloved Giants. 19-10 last week, they're up with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I don't understand how the Ravens have just flipped into this franchise that is like making bad decisions. Like, how am I looking at John Harbaugh and thinking I might want his job? Like, we talked about this in the group chat. Not I want his job, but somebody should come for his job, because they've never been this, the Ravens. And I don't like to be the guy who's like, oh, it's me and my bad luck. But as I back the Ravens in multiple ways this year, I was like you, Pete, going into the year, I was really big on the Ravens. I've got them with the Chiefs to make the playoffs, with the Vikings to make the playoffs. Those are 2 separate bets. The Ravens are just like toying with me right now. I've never seen this from this team. It's just bizarre. The way they've lost, their schedule is fine. I still think they make the playoffs, but I can't see them going all that far anymore, because these losses are just alarming to me. Teams that lose in this fashion, it doesn't seem like they're just going to turn it around and now they get into the playoffs and they'll be rolling. I just don't see that from them. Their offense doesn't look like they have it. They're turning the ball over in the red zone. The secondary, like Pat pointed to, great start by me on Zay Jones, but Zay Jones shouldn't go for 11 and $145 against the Ravens. And they made Trevor Lawrence look like he was back at Clemson on that last drive. He went 90 yards or whatever it was and just completely lit them up with no resilience. It's just, I just don't understand where this came from Baltimore.
With no timeouts either.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really weird. It's one of those things where, if say the Jaguars don't get the 2-point conversion, right? They go down and they drive down the field, have the big touchdown, but don't get the 2-point conversion, or they go to overtime and the Ravens win in overtime, or Justin Tucker hits the 67-yard field goal for that matter, which looked for a hot second like it was going to make it, which would have been insane. Are we having this conversation right now? They're 8-3 instead of 7-4. They have a full game lead. Are they then minus, 400 to win the division if they win that game against Jacksonville? I'm not sure. But going back to the preseason where I was pro Ravens and actually anti Bengals, if you remember, Pat, they were my lock under for the year this year. That's still looking all right. And it's because their schedule is really difficult moving forward. Like, that's kind of what happens when you become one of these teams like the Bengals did last year. You're not going to get easy matchups. You're not going to get half-ass competition. You're going to get everyone's best shot. And with the schedule obviously favoring the Ravens, I'm hard pressed to say that they're a better team than the Bengals right now. And Pat, when we did our top 8 teams in the NFL just 2 weeks ago on the podcast, where we discussed literally the power rankings for the league, I said this about the Bengals. I can believe that they are a better team than some of the teams ahead of them, and still confidently believe they will end up behind those teams in the rankings. That includes, just in the AFC alone, it includes the Tennessee Titans. It includes the Baltimore Ravens, and they just beat the Titans. It includes the Jets and the Patriots, for that matter, right? Like, they can be neck and neck with the Jets and Patriots. I can think the Bengals are way better, and it just won't matter based off who they have to go up against. I mean, it's a tough go. You know, they can beat the Chiefs. Clearly, they did it last year. They can beat the Bucs. The Bucs are very beatable, but those are very difficult games. Like, they can run the table, but they can easily drop, 3 or 4 games in the next couple weeks here too. So I still have faith in my pick based off of what's ahead, but I don't have faith in the idea that the Ravens are clear-cut better than the Cincinnati Bengals. So we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to watch a Week 18 matchup between Cincinnati and Baltimore. That's a win for the division, and that'll be insanely exciting. I hope that's the case, and I'm here for it. So I think my preseason pick will be correct, because I think the Ravens will take care of the business, but I don't think they're better. I think they're comparable at best right now, and I think the Bengals might even be better. And last thing on the Ravens, they got to play the Steelers twice. Steelers don't suck. Is that fair to say? Do the Steelers not suck? We kind of thought they sucked for a while. Are the Steelers competent now? Do they have their things going in the right direction here? Is Mike Tomlin going to figure out a way to get to 8 wins here somehow?
Just not the team to write off as easily, with Kenny Pickett playing better, and really who I think might be the best player in football in TJ Watt back. Like, that guy is just a game wrecker. He didn't have to do it this week, and I know he didn't, because I took him to take a sack that lost me my parlay. Different conversation, different day. No, they're not a team to take lightly, and you know that they've got a lot of pride over there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I think there's just so many mediocre teams in the league this year that you lump Pittsburgh in there with them, and you're like, but they could. No, I think they're a mediocre team. And I think that should be, if not 2 wins, it should be 2 wins at the absolute, worst. It should be a split for Baltimore.
Yeah, and right now Lamar is the leading rusher for the Ravens by over 350 yards. So I know he runs. I know that's his thing, but you don't want him to have 350 more yards than anybody else on the team. And I know it's been a carousel with, Kenyon Drake, Justice Hill, Dobbins for like a couple weeks, and Gus Edwards now back. But man, they need some stability there. And when they were cooking, when they were at their best, they had a real run game that wasn't just Lamar. It was Lamar and Gus and JK, Lamar and Mark Ingram, whatever it was. It wasn't just him doing it all himself. But I will not sit here and take Lamar hate. And I'm glad none of us went there on this podcast, because I think that is outrageous when you look at the talent that he plays with. Devin Duvernay, with 340 yards, is their number 1 wide receiver. What? You kidding me? Like, what are we doing? Tyler Boyd would be the best receiver on this team by 20 yards. I mean, by 20 yards, I don't mean 20 yards more for the season. I just meant for a sake of measurement. He is 10 times better than any receiver they got right now. Tyler Boyd would be way better, and he's their number 3, who people crap on for not even being that talented in Cincinnati. So I don't know. I'm not taking Lamar hate, and I'm glad we didn't go there. Let's move on. Next division here to talk about. We're going to switch over to the NFC. Let's bang out the NFC East. And let me just ask you straight up. Do the Eagles lose this division somehow to the Cowboys? Is that possible in your guys' opinion?
No.
No.
If you agree with that, yeah. Well, then that's it, right? Like, I think we could have a conversation right now about how good the Cowboys are and what their playoff chances could be to make a run at the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship, or whatever we want to do with the Cowboys, because their defense deserves that recognition. Their offense has some juice. We all know this, but we're all here confidently saying it's still the Eagles division, and we're not going to discuss that any further for now. All right, let's talk about the NFC South then. NFC South, led by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at a wild 5-6 record. Sheesh. Followed by the Falcons, 5-7, Panthers and Saints at 4-8. What the hell's going on in the NFC South, guys? Right now, the division odds for this division are Buccaneers -400, Falcons +750, Saints and Panthers +1,000 and +1,600. Is there a world where the Bucs don't win this division? Because as easy as they know, perhaps they're trying to tell us that it's not going to be so easy for Tampa to win this thing.
I just don't know who is gonna win it if it's not the Bucks. Like, I don't have really much confidence in the Bucks, but who can you say you do have the? Is it Sam Darnold now? Because I swear that's probably the next option for me, unless maybe the Saints decide it's no longer Andy Dalton, Jameis, throws up some W's or something. I don't know who else it could be, but as you know, it's funny that we've brought up 3 divisions. And my futures, it's not like I have a future on every single division in the league, but the divisions that are still available, those were the ones I took. It's Bucks and Bills. The Ravens can make the playoffs either way, but that one is very much up for grabs. But I think the Bucks probably win it, even if it's with 8 wins. It's just a weird division. It reminds us of the NFC West couple years back. Remember Marshawn hold my dick into the end zone, they win the playoff game. That's what it kind of reminds me of. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Bucks do win, if they go and win another playoff game or even 2. And it's just what a division that is.
I mean, look, we're going to find out either one way or another because they all basically play each other here the final couple of weeks. Tampa Bay's got to play New Orleans Monday night. I mean, that is the classic Monday night Brady game against the Saints defense that for the most part owns him in the regular season. Can he beat them? I mean, they won, back in week 2. He didn't have to do much. The defense won that game as they have won most of their games this year. It is becoming a struggle for Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just to get to 20 points on a week-to-week basis. This is the amount of points they've put up the last several weeks. 17, loss. 21, 5-point win in Germany. 16, 3-point win. 22, loss. 3 against Carolina, loss. 18 against Pittsburgh, loss. 21 against Atlanta, 6-point win. So, I mean, we keep asking, like, when is Brady and this offense going to figure it out? I mean, when I'm watching the games, Tom Brady doesn't look like that. He still doesn't look like that much of a different quarterback to me. The one game against Carolina was probably the worst game I think I've ever seen him play. Outside of that, he's still making most of the throws. They just, I don't know, the chemistry with him and Mike Evans is not there this year. I mean, they're missing like big plays by like 1 or 2 steps. The offensive line obviously has not been nearly as good as they thought it was. Now Tristan Wirfs is out. He's not playing Monday night against New Orleans. That's another huge blow for them. They have no run game. They haven't had a run game all year long, whether it's been Lenny or Rashad White or Keyshawn Vaughn or whoever the hell else they want to run out there. And they haven't had the tight end threat. Cameron Brate had a couple of concussions. Cade Otton was a nice little story for like a week. Ko Keefe caught a touchdown on Sunday. Who the hell is that? So they have zero. They don't have that red zone threat like they had with Gronk. And I really thought Gronk was going to come back at some point this year and save this team. I don't think he is. So I don't know what's going to have to change. Leftwich is going to have to get creative somehow with the schemes. Brady's going to have to get creative with the receivers. They've got to do something because they will lose the division if they keep just showing up on Sunday and thinking that name, image, and likeness can get themselves a win every single week, because it won't and it can't. And again, you got Atlanta, Carolina, and New Orleans. Now as we enter week 13, all have a legitimate shot as they are a half game back basically of Tom Brady, or a game and a half back of the division crown with just 4 or 5 weeks to go. I don't think any of them thought they were going to be in this position. Now they are. So Brady and the Bucs better wake up and figure it out, which, again, I'm going to bet on Tom Brady that he will, and that's why they're minus 400 odds. But, man, this has been a pretty pathetic season so far for them.
Yeah, it really is weird because red zone has been automatic in Tom Brady's career, and it's not this year. The question of who's the next team to take it, I think we're all off Atlanta from being a surprise playoff team like that. Carolina with Sam Darnold, I mean, maybe they'll look that good moving forward again. Maybe once this season. Like, I don't know. The Saints still have some talent, but I don't know. Again, well, let me ask you guys a question. What do you think is the ranking for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in red zone attempts this year? Just red zone attempts. Where do you think they rank out of 32?
Just getting into the red zone?
Yep, just getting to the red zone.
I'm going to go ahead and say 26th.
No, I bet they're like closer to top 10. They move the ball. Like that's not their. They move the ball all day long, and that's why I question like what's going on with Mike Evans or Todd Bowles. I'll put him somewhere in like the 12 range.
Okay, so Pat was correct. It's 24th on red zone attempts. Cody, I would have guessed the same as you, that it would have been higher on attempts. Now, attempts is 24th with 32 attempts. Where is their ranking for red zone percentage? So percentage of drives that end in points here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Or I'm sorry, ends in a touchdown for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Where do they rank there out of 32?
31st.
Yeah, somewhere down there, like 28.
Yep, 27th. 27th. So a team that's led by Tom Brady with some talent still on the offensive end is 24th in red zone attempts and 27th in percentage, right? So there are some teams up there, for example, the Dallas Cowboys, who have only been to the red zone 33 times, just one more time than the Buccaneers, but they've scored 7 more touchdowns, right? So they're fourth in the NFL in red zone percentage of touchdowns. So that's the difference right there for them. 50% success rate on scoring touchdowns when making it to the red zone. You talked about those scoring totals, Pat. That coincides with them not covering a lot of spreads. That's it right there. Yes, they can get there more. I would imagine they get to that 30 range where they're kicking field goals more, Cody, which is why you and I both would have thought they made it more than they did. But all in all, it goes back to like the same conversation with the Giants. They were so bad for years in the red zone and scoring touchdowns. That's the Tampa Bay Bucs right now. And that's not what you expect out of Tom Brady. And with all that being said, it sounds like we're all still taking the Bucs to win the NFC South.
Yeah, and it's crazy because, I'm sure that there's people listening that are going, well, you guys are just Brady believers. He sucks. Tom Brady's got the fourth most yards in football this year. He's only thrown 2 interceptions. He's only been, as bad as the offensive line has been, he's only been sacked 17 times. He's got a passer rating of 92, which is up there in the top 10 in the league. And he's 66% completion percentage. So, and the Buccaneers are a top 5 passing offense. I really think it's the fact that they are the worst rush offense team in football, 73 yards per game, that as games go on, teams know there is one way we're getting beat, and it's by Brady and the arm, and we're not letting it happen. And you see these shell defenses in the second half, bend but don't break. And at a certain point, you can't just throw the ball every single play. And they've got to establish a run game, and they have nothing. They don't have one. So when you're that one-dimensional of an offense, as good as that one dimension is, that only gets you so far.
Sorry, go ahead, Cody.
It's funny because you talked about the Jags earlier with that Ravens game, right? And if the Jags don't get the 2-point conversion, how's our conversation shift? Well, if the Bucs go for that 4th down and get it, this conversation is certainly a hell of a lot different. And it's perfect to what Pat's saying about how they don't run the ball. 4th and 2 at the 37 against a Browns team who can't stop the run. And you telling me you can't even try to get 2 yards? Like, that is such a big difference right there. They win that game. We have a whole different outlook. They're probably minus 750 to win the division, which I think minus 400 is too much. But it's just, you got to put a team away there. And that's the difference in our conversation today.
Yeah, it's so true though, Cody. You're right. That one play for a couple different teams would change the entire outlook on what we're saying between week 12 and week 13, which is something I bring up all the time. How one thing changes an entire narrative for weeks at a time. So right now, here's one more stat for you guys. There's on profootballreference.com, there is expected points contributed stat. So it's expected points contributed by rushing offense right now, right? There are 8 teams in the NFL who have a negative expected points by rushing offense for the season. You guys will never guess some of these teams that are in the negative. Again, there's 8 teams. They include the San Francisco 49ers, shocker number 1. They're number 24. The New Orleans Saints, number 25. The Tennessee Titans, number 26. The Rams, 27. They suck, whatever. The Dolphins don't really run the ball. Makes sense. The Patriots, minus 16 expected points by their rushing offense, 29th ranked in the league. And Denver is 30th, and the Colts and Buccaneers make 31 and 32. I mean, if you think about those teams right there, Niners, Saints, Titans, Patriots, Colts, and Buccaneers, those are all teams that we think of as run the football and dominate up front. None of those teams are actually doing it right now. It's actually mind-boggling. And the Buccaneers, the worst of them all, only 4 rushing touchdowns on the year. And to go to that red zone percentage, 4 rushing touchdowns, that's abysmal. That's pathetic. So again, we're not Brady backers and Brady whatever you want to call us. This team got issues. It ain't Brady. It might be part Brady. You know, I can sit here and argue and say, oh, the reason his numbers are still so good is because he wants to get rid of the ball so quick and not get hit. That's where he is at in his career. Sure, he's still doing so much more than the rest of this offense. So much more. So, frick, who the hell knows? Saints, maybe. Panthers, I don't know. Sam Darnold, what the hell? Bucks win the division, I guess. I don't know. Lastly, last division. This one will probably be quick. NFC West, San Francisco 49ers, 7-4. Seattle Seahawks, 6-5. Niners, are we feeling good? Are we feeling like the Niners are hitting stride? Are we feeling like they are the team to beat here in the NFC West and possibly in the NFC, like so many people thought throughout the season and before the season? They're on a 4-game win streak. Is the NFC West the Niners to lose?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we would be having a different conversation if Seattle could close that game out on Sunday against Vegas. I think they shot themselves in the foot. I think ultimately that's what it's going to come down to. But nobody's on the 49ers level in that division. The Rams, they're one of the worst teams in football. The Cardinals, they're a joke. Seattle's their only competitor. And I think it's clear to everybody that the 49ers have the best defense in football. I would maybe put the Bills up next to them and the Eagles perhaps and the Cowboys as 3rd and 4th.
Yep.
But their defense is just unbelievable. And seeing what they did against New Orleans, anytime the Saints came even close to scoring points, turnover. Excuse me, I have to cough.
Yeah,
turnover on downs, turnover. Knock them out of field goal position, knock them out of field goal range. I mean, it was unbelievable. I'm pretty sure the Saints had 4 trips to the red zone, and they got shut out for the game. Now, again, it's the Saints offense compared to one that was, one that would actually be, one that could close drives and get points on the board. That being said, you said it, they've hit their stride. They dealt with the injury bug big time. I mean, at one point they had like 9 starters out of a potential 22 when you factor in both sides of the ball. They had 9 guys that were hurt for like a 4-week span. So all those guys are back now. Then they added McCaffrey. The offensive line is super solid. Trent Williams is one of the best all-around players in football. And I said it before, I'll keep saying it, Jimmy Garoppolo, all the guy does is win. All he does is win. So, you get this team under Kyle Shanahan, and it's a winning formula year after year after year. And Jason Verrett, one of their best offensive players, corner goes down. Diamador Lenore steps in and has been playing a big role. Talanoa Hufanga, Palomalu Jr., he has been a massive part of their success in the secondary. The linebackers don't miss tackles. You got Bosa leading the charge, getting to the quarterback. I mean, this defense is a nightmare to play against week in and week out. It's their division to lose. Pretty clear cut and dry.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree that it's their division to lose, but I'm not all the way. Like, I love how you called them Vegas's darling right now, Pete, because it feels like they're like this trendy pick right now. I think they've got limitations just like the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Vikings. I think those are the 4 teams in the NFC that we're looking at to come out. And I think any of those 4 can beat the other. And it feels like this wave has come onto San Fran, and we're like, oh, now it's San Fran's conference. They've got their limitations. Yes, they're good. They're going to win their division. I think would be a shock to find out they didn't. But I just think they're just as good as those other 3 teams I named. I think all 4 of those teams could come out of the NFC. I wouldn't be any more surprised than the other. They still got Kyle Shanahan, who knows how to blow a lead, damn it. And when it comes down to it and we're in the playoffs, I don't know that I could back him. If Jimmy G goes down, I get nervous about his ability to be able to throw his team back into a game. So division, no problem. I'm not all the way there where it seems like everyone has moved on to the San Fran wave. They're very good. They're just as good to me as those other 3.
It's just crazy to me that they are kind of the opposite of what they used to be. And these stats are encompassing the entire year, which obviously talk about all those injuries that Pat just mentioned. Like I mentioned before, they are 24th in expected points by rushing. They are 5th in expected points by passing this year. So they are a pass-heavy team at this point. It's not what we're used to with the 49ers, but Ayuk has turned into a really good receiver. Obviously, the Debo Kittle factor and McCaffrey in the pass game is very helpful, right? Like, I'm not convinced that McCaffrey's better at running their scheme from a running standpoint than Elijah Mitchell, right? Like, Mitchell might be a better ball carrier than McCaffrey for this team, but what McCaffrey adds to the dynamicism, I can never say that word, offensively as a whole, obviously huge. But tell me, what's been the most impressive win for the Niners this year? You guys tell me. They beat the Seahawks by 20 in week 2. Then they beat the Rams and Panthers. No, none of us care about those. They lost to the Chiefs and Falcons. They beat the Rams again, Chargers by 6, Cardinals by 28, and then Saints last week 13-0. What's their most impressive win? Is it the Chargers? Is it the Seahawks in week 2 do we even care about that? Like, have they done anything that was that impressive yet this year?
I would say not overly impressive. I think looking back on it, a 20-point win against Seattle was pretty impressive.
Right.
The win against the Chargers, I think, is their best win of the year. But I mean, you look back at a couple of their losses here. Yeah, losing to Atlanta on the road by 14, that's not a good one. They got blown out by Kansas City. But I just think what this team has looked like in the past 4 weeks is a Super Bowl caliber defense, which is the defense that, if they stay healthy, can beat anybody any given week. And you mentioned that they're 5th in most expected points passing. That's because they've changed the way that they move the ball. It's these short passes to McCaffrey, swinging him out in the flat, getting him out, in between the zone and the zone defense, in between the secondary and the linebackers, getting Debo on those short slant routes and coming in with the crossing routes, and just all the weapons they have. You mentioned Ayuk and what Jawan Jennings has turned into, and then they still don't use, they underuse George Kittle, which just goes to show you how many weapons they have on this team. So yeah, I mean, you look at who they've beaten this year, not a whole lot of impressive teams. They had kind of a weak schedule if you look at it. But I think the eye test for me, this team passes the eye test more so than most teams in the league, and that's why I've been so confident in saying that there's no shot they lose this division.
And outside of the Chiefs' loss, I think the Dolphins are the biggest test right now on their schedule, even remaining. Right after the Dolphins is Bucs, Seahawks, Commanders, Raiders, Cardinals. Dolphins are the only real juggernaut adjacent team on their schedule. So if they show up and hold this Dolphins offense to 14 points or something like that, we're talking business right now, because they've given up 40 points combined over the last 4 weeks. That's impressive. Cody, what do you got?
There's some great games this week that you just thought about, made me think about that. What I also thought about this whole time was, I don't think I like those stats. I don't think I like that stat, expected passing and expected running, because it made me feel like I don't know what I'm watching anymore, to say that this team in San Fran is a top 5 expected passing team, when yes, they've certainly been better, and maybe that's because McCaffrey's been dropping dimes over there, but I don't understand the stat. I don't like it. That's where my take is.
Well, I hear you, because it's all these advanced metrics are a little bit convoluted and a little bit more difficult to wrap your head around. But I think the point that I was trying to make was, these teams that we're thinking of as great run teams, it's really based off their brand. It's based off of who they have been over the past handful of years, right? Like, if you ask the average football fan, who are the best 5 rushing offenses in the NFL? I can guarantee you they'd bring up the 49ers, the Titans, and the Colts, right? Even though maybe more people are aware the Colts have struggled this year, so maybe they wouldn't pick the Colts, but you think of Jonathan Taylor, you think of the Patriots, you think of the Titans, and meanwhile, all those teams are struggling, and realistically, the best teams at running the football are the Eagles, the Ravens, with is all Lamar, obviously, and like the Browns and Falcons and Giants. Like those are the teams that are running the ball like crazy, and those are the top 5 or 6 teams in this statistic. So I think my point was more to say what we've come to know as true over the past 3 or 4 years is not necessarily true right now. So I agree with you, Cody. Like wrapping your head around the stat specifically is probably difficult, but it tells you something about what is actually happening versus what we think is happening, if that makes sense.
Nope, stupid stat. I hate it. No, just kidding. It's hard to like wrap my head around because, dude, like you said it though, but how the Titans with Derrick Henry, who's top 3 in the league in rushing, are in the bottom tier of that. Just, I don't get it. Don't like it.
Well, yeah, and part of it probably goes to, as I'm pulling it up here. Yeah, the Titans are averaging 4.2 yards per carry. Not good. Like even Derrick Henry last year, when he was still the juggernaut before he got hurt, was not having an efficient running year. His volume was sick. And how he got better in fourth quarters after averaging 2 yards a carry for the first 3 and then going off in the fourth, like that was sick. But the consistency and the efficiency was not necessarily there. But boy, did we cover a lot on this episode. Wonderful stuff. Do we have any last words? Anything that you want to shout out about week 13 coming up, or just in general in life? The Knicks won big against the Pistons. Who cares? Whatever. Pat, you got anything for me?
It got to a point where for a couple of weeks in a row, we were dying for like just 2 good matchups a week. We had 2 matchups where both teams had winning records. We've got 6 this week. 6. Bills, Pats, Jets, Vikings, Commanders, Giants, Titans, Eagles, Dolphins, Niners, Chiefs, Bengals. This is going to be the best week of football we probably see all year in terms of the matchups. I cannot wait. And then a side shout out, if you're listening to this and you're watching football this Sunday, which would be December 4th, I'll be hosting on The Fan late Sunday night into early Monday morning, 2 to 5 a.m. in for our boy Sal Licata.
Wait, are you serious? Wait, what day?
This upcoming Monday, so like 5 days from now. Early Monday, 2 to 5 a.m.
After Sunday.
Yeah, like a late Sunday night into an early Monday morning.
I was going to say I'm producing Sunday night, overnight, Sunday overnight.
Oh, but you're doing Saturday into Sunday.
Saturday into Sunday. Yeah. Sorry. I'm doing midnight Sunday morning to 6 a.m. Sunday morning. If you were hosting and I was producing, I would have been very excited. It would have been a SST takeover.
It would have been SST taking over The Fan.
Yeah, and then I would have got fired probably.
Why would you have been fired?
No, I'm just kidding. In the old Chernoff days, though, if we brought up Subway Sports Talk on The Fan, fired instantly. Not actually. I'm just kidding. But no, that would have been exciting, Pat, if I was producing for you. But I'll probably not be tuning in overnight on Monday. Maybe I'll catch a little bit at some point. But
it's all right. Get the Odyssey app and use the rewind feature.
Play back on Monday morning on my way to work. That sounds accurate. That sounds possible. I look forward to it.
You listen to SST Wednesday morning or Thursday morning if you're late, or even Friday morning, and then you listen to the Picks podcast over the weekend, and then listen to Patty Boyle on The Fan on Monday morning.
Beautiful. Cody, you got anything for us?
Well, one, you can never have too much Pat, so I'll be listening to all of those. That's for sure. 2, except, you know what's so funny? I kept thinking about this the whole time. You kind of remind me with the sickness in your voice, not like you're to that level, but week 1, Chris Collinsworth, if you guys could think back that time when he was sick on the call, he sounded just horrible. You sound much better than him, by the way. It was terrible. And got to shout out the 19-4 New Jersey Devils playing great hockey right now. I know this isn't what we're doing, but it's been fun to watch. Devils have earned a spot on my TV, and that's not easy to do.
That's a good shout out. And I actually kind of want to go to a Devils game, honestly. I heard there's a nice beer garden outside. Heard it's a great atmosphere, and I'm intrigued. I would like to check that out. I think I might have to do something about that. Have you been this year, Cody? Have you been to a Devils game?
No, I haven't been this year. My plan is to go soon. where I used to teach in Newark was right up the street. So I hope that I can kind of do a 2-for-1, go visit the old school, see the kids, go have a beer afterwards, and watch the Devils play some good hockey like they've been.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Wonderful stuff all around on Subway Sports Talk. Thank you guys for listening as always. New York Giants, New York Jets, division races. Football is live. And we'll obviously touch on more basketball as the season kicks on. But it's football season, bro. We're in the midst of it. It's super fun. I can't wait to keep doing it. Thanks for listening to Subway Sports Talk. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review on the Apple Podcast app and Spotify. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube. And we will talk to you in a few days with our Week 13 NFL picks. Pat, thank you. Cody, thank you. I'm Pete Kennedy. Cheers.